I overheard my father tell my stepmother, in the most casual, dismissive tone, "She's a burden, absolutely. We'll manage until she's gone, but she is a financial anchor tied to our necks, and I can't wait to cut the rope." He thought he had hung up the phone after our conversation. He didn't. I heard every single brutal word. A burden, that was me. That was my father describing his own daughter. I was a week away from selling my $980,000 home in a highly desirable part of the city, a home I had worked myself to the bone for, and my parents had no idea. They thought I was still just the financially struggling, overly emotional daughter who would always need them. They were wrong, and after hearing those words, I knew exactly how I was going to prove it to them. The question I keep asking myself now, months later, is this: was I wrong for completely cutting them out of the life they thought they had a claim to, using the exact financial independence they resented? Tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing. This story, the one that changed the entire trajectory of my life and the relationship I thought I had with my family, started innocently enough, like most betrayals do. I'm 35 years old, and for the last 15 years, I've had a complicated, financially strained relationship with my dad and my stepmother, Lisa. My biological mother passed away when I was in college, and my dad remarried Lisa about 5 years later. Lisa wasn't malicious exactly, but she was calculating, and she was always very clear that my dad's money was their asterisk money. My dad, bless his heart, had always been generous, maybe overly so, but his generosity always came with strings attached. Strings of obligation, guilt, and a constant reminder of how much he was doing for me. When my mother died, I was still struggling to finish my degree and deal with the grief. My dad helped pay off the remainder of my student loans, a grand total of about $20,000. Now, that is a significant amount of money, and I am eternally grateful for it. But from that moment on, it became the foundation of every argument and every perceived slight. It was the $20,000 albatross around my neck that he and Lisa used to justify every intrusion, every unsolicited piece of financial advice, and every veiled criticism of my life choices. For the record, I was never a deadbeat. I finished my degree, I worked tirelessly, and I established a successful career in software development. I made a very good salary, but I was also fiercely independent and didn't brag about my income. I preferred to live a quiet, unassuming life, especially when it came to my family. The big change happened 6 years ago. I took a massive risk and invested heavily in a fixer-upper house in a rapidly gentrifying area. It was a wreck. Leaky roof, outdated everything, but the location was gold, and I bought it at a steal for around $250,000. My dad and Lisa absolutely panicked. They told me I was financially irresponsible, that I was biting off more than I could chew, and that I should have used that money to pay them back for the student loans, even though I had already paid them back in full years ago. They just kept moving the goalposts. They insisted they needed to help manage my finances, which really meant they needed to know the balance of my savings account and approve any major purchase. I mostly managed to keep them at bay, giving them vague updates and downplaying my success. Over the last 6 years, I poured every spare moment, every bonus, and every ounce of my energy into that house. I learned plumbing, electrical, carpentry. I transformed that ramshackle house into a beautifully modern, highly sought after property. This was my secret project, my quiet triumph. I knew the market was right, and I had already engaged a realtor to list the house. The initial appraisal came in at a staggering $980,000. It was nearly $1 million. I felt a surge of pride that I had never felt before. This was proof that I didn't need their help, that I wasn't a burden, that I was, in fact, incredibly successful. The reason for the call that day, the one where I heard everything, was a request they had made. My stepbrother, Lisa's son from a previous marriage, was getting married, and they were planning an extravagant destination wedding. They called me, and, after the usual pleasantries, my dad asked me to lend them €15 for the wedding expenses. He called it a loan, but the phrasing felt more like a demand disguised as a favor. He said, "You know we've always looked out for you, and now we need you to look out for us. You owe us this, considering everything we've done." I was shocked. $15,000 was a massive sum, and I knew how Lisa operated. It would never be paid back, or if it was, it would be another 20 years of guilt trips. I calmly told him I couldn't do it. I lied and said my company had had a rough quarter and my bonuses were cut, making my personal finances tight. It was a difficult conversation, full of sighs and thinly veiled disappointment from my father. He sounded defeated and said he understood, but I could hear the bitterness in his voice. We said our goodbyes. Then came the silence, followed by the muffled voices. My dad hadn't hung up the phone properly. It must have been pressed up against his chest or slightly off the hook, but I could hear them perfectly in the background. My stepmother, Lisa, started first. "Well, that was pathetic. She's supposed to be successful. She can't even cough up 15,000 for her brother's wedding. After all you've done for her, it's proof, Richard, she's selfish." My dad's response, the one that broke my heart into a million irreparable pieces, was what I mentioned at the beginning. "She's a burden, absolutely. We'll manage until she's gone, but she is a financial anchor tied to our necks, and I can't wait to cut the rope. When she finds a husband, she'll finally be someone else's problem." I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the man who was supposed to be my protector, my champion, call me a financial anchor and a burden, wishing I would just disappear and become someone else's problem. My hands were shaking, and my entire world felt like it had been pulled out from under me. All the years of pretending, of keeping my success a secret so I wouldn't have to deal with their demands, had been for nothing. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a liability that they were waiting to offload. I didn't say anything. I quietly pressed the end call button, my mind reeling. I didn't call them back. I didn't confront them. I didn't even cry, strangely enough. A cold, hard resolve set in. I was no longer interested in proving I was not a burden. I was interested in showing them what my life would look like when that financial anchor was completely cut off. They wanted me gone. I would give them gone. The sale of my house was set to close in a week, and I had already purchased a smaller, beautiful condo downtown that was a cash purchase, no mortgage. This move, originally a financial upgrade, now became the engine of my silent revenge. For the last 6 years, they had operated under the assumption that I was struggling, that I was a ticking time bomb of financial emergency that they, as my parents, needed to be available for. They loved the power that assumption gave them. That power was about to vanish, so that's the situation I was in. I had the means to finally be completely free of them, and I had the motivation, their own cruel, accidental confession, to do it. I was sitting on a massive amount of liquid cash, a successful career, a new home, and a broken heart. I had to make a choice. Do I confront them and try to salvage a relationship that was clearly built on resentment and financial exploitation? Or do I use my newfound financial power to walk away completely, without a word of explanation, and never look back? Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause right now and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted the burden, callers, or would you have chosen silence and permanent financial freedom? I chose silence. I chose the clean cut. The closing on the house was seamless. The money hit my account, and I was now officially a wealthy, independent woman. My first act was to draft a legal document. Since I was moving into a secure condo building and changing my address to one they would never find, I had to sever the connection completely. I sent my father a certified letter a few days after the closing. The letter was short and to the point. It stated that due to recent professional changes, I was changing all my contact information, including phone number, address, and email, and would no longer be reachable. Crucially, I attached a bank cashier's check for $25,000. This check was labeled clearly in the memo line, "Final repayment, full and final satisfaction of all past gifts and perceived obligations." The check wasn't just the original $20,000 for the student loan. It was $25,000, covering interest, inflation, and a little extra to buy my absolute, unquestionable freedom. It was a massive, nonverbal declaration that I was done being indebted, done being a burden, and done being their problem. The moment the certified receipt came back, I changed my phone number, deleted my social media profiles that they followed, and completely ghosted them. I moved into my new condo, which was blissfully free of their influence, and started my new life. The explosion started 3 days later. They began trying to call my old number incessantly, then emailing. The emails started polite. "Are you okay? We're worried." Then they grew frantic. "Call your father back immediately. This is not a game." And then they turned venomous, exactly as I knew they would. Lisa was the main writer, accusing me of being cold, ungrateful, and a terrible daughter. My father's one email was particularly telling. He didn't ask if I was okay. He asked, "What about the $15,000 we asked for? You can't just run off when we needed you." He still had no idea about the $980,000 sale or the $25,000 check. The climax came when they found out. I had a shared professional contact, an old friend who didn't know the full story. My father, in a frantic attempt to find me, called this friend and mentioned that I had inexplicably vanished after they had tried to help her with her finances. My friend, trying to defend me, let the cat out of the bag. Help her. She just sold her house for almost $1 million. She doesn't need help from anyone. I didn't hear the immediate reaction, but the result was spectacular. The next set of emails I received were hysterical. They had found the letter and the check, and the pieces had clicked into place. They weren't angry about the money. They were enraged about the independence. They realized that the burden they had been complaining about was actually a highly successful woman who had just paid them off and walked away, and they had permanently lost access to her. They demanded a meeting, stating that the check was insulting, and that my actions were unfilial. I never replied. I had bought my freedom for $25,000, and I wasn't giving it back. The aftermath has been peaceful, albeit sad. The silence is profound. My half-brother, Lisa's son, did reach out to me via a new social media profile I had created. He was kind and apologized for his parents' behavior. He told me that my father was devastated, not just because of the money, but because he realized how completely he had failed as a parent. Lisa, according to him, was still bitter, claiming I had stolen the money that should have rightfully been theirs. But I don't care what they think anymore. The emotional burden of being their indebted daughter was heavier than any financial debt they could ever claim. I am now mortgage-free, emotionally free, and financially secure. The $980,000 sale was the key to my physical freedom, but the phone call, where I heard them call me a burden, was the key to my emotional freedom. It forced me to see the truth and act decisively. The consequence is simple. I lost a father, but I gained my life. I sometimes wonder if my decision was too harsh, too final, but then I remember the cold, casual way he said, "She's a burden," and the doubt fades. I am not a burden. I am a success story, and that success is entirely my own. The quiet life I built for myself, far away from their toxic sense of entitlement, is the best revenge. I have never been happier, and I have never been more certain that I did the right thing. So, that's my story of the accidental eavesdropping that led to the great escape. Like this video if you were absolutely on my side and think my father and stepmother got exactly what they deserved. Subscribe for more true stories about family drama, revenge, and walking away from toxicity. I'd love to hear your final thoughts on this whole mess. Did I handle the money and the breakup correctly? Or should I have been kinder? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll see you all in the next story.